My name is Brad Cook. I work for a company called Informatica. Who here knows who Informatica is or what we do? I love it, because the more I speak, the more hands go up. We're a data integration company, or should I say data integration company. And what we do is we help customers connect masses and masses of data, which inherently means we understand what data is all about. What I hope you walk away with this afternoon is that I actually break down the hype of what big data is and what is not. Big data as a word is like cloud. Every man and his dog talks about, I'm a cloud company, I'm a big data company, you should come and work for me. We're a data integration company. We happen to do both of those things, but first and foremost, we're an integration company. So I'll share a video with you first, and then we'll come back to it.
Just now, in the blink of an eye, billions of connections were made, setting millions of decisions in motion. In emergency rooms and warehouses, on Wall Street and Main Street, miles beneath us and miles above us. Information technology is automating and accelerating every facet of our lives. So what does this all mean for the business leader, the data scientist, or information professional? We aren't just confined to the data center anymore. We are charged with keeping all information flowing, from detecting to sensing, from responding to anticipating, from analyzing to taking action. And we are responsible for the fuel that keeps all this in motion. That fuel is data. It's our job to ensure that it's clean and trustworthy, that it's safe and secure, that it's connected to the applications, devices, and people who need it at the right time, in the right place. Every organization on the planet needs a foundation that interacts with data naturally and empowers better decision-making. An intelligent data platform that navigates the ever-changing world that data travels through and is powered by an engine that puts it all into action. Data is on the move. Things are getting faster. Devices are smarter. Expectations are higher. Our potential has never been greater.
Does this resonate? Every one of you in this room is contributing to that. You're contributing to what the world is calling big data. What I want to try and stop today is big data is not lots of data. And I want to explain to you the concept of how big data as a technology works, how it's leveraged in business. That'll be the 10,000-foot view. And then I want to come down to the grassroots, which is what we can all do when it comes to our daily lives as recruiters and managers and leaders or hiring managers, how we leverage that data in our day-to-day life, and how you then can turn that into something that gives you a return on the investment of usually time. You're putting time in to maintain data and how you actually do something with that. So this is the definition of big data online. It's data sets that are too large for normal mainstream databases of today to manage. Volume could be one, velocity, how fast things are coming in, also variety. So those 3 V's is how data can come to you. So I want to get everybody up. So everybody, you guys over there, you stay where you are, you stay sitting. Everybody on this room, in this side, stand up for me. Great. So 40 years ago, IBM invented a mainframe computer. And on that, it had massive, what they call DASD, big disk drives. And those disk drives were connected to a mainframe, which those guys over there are going to be the computers at one point. But think about the storage. Now, the way storage used to work by then, someone over there would say, I want a piece of data. It would go out, bring it back. Go out, bring it back. So everybody face that side of the room and do this. Go back, bring it back. You're the disk drives of 40 years ago. You're doing that. I want one person over that side to stand up, just one. Guy with the white shirt on his phone, perfect. He's the mainframe guy. He's the one computer processor that was asking this side of the room for data, okay? One at a time, one at a time. Yes, the disk drive sped up, but one at a time, one at a time. So you could see where the bottleneck was. The processor became the bottleneck. Then we get into client server. So now maybe the front section stands up. So now we get into client server environment where you start to have more processes clustered together. And you can now share more data and more throughput because you've got more processes. Now everybody on that side of the room stands up. Now you have the supercomputer. Masses and masses of computer power, processing power all over the world. And they're requesting data from you. But here's the problem. That technology of one side of the room to the other is 40 years old. Yes, you can make things faster with silicon, but you can't speed up the processing of one side of the room to the other, or from a processor to your controllers into a hard drive. So now comes Hadoop, which is the technology that fuels big data. Now, there's a few big gaps in the room, but if you imagine everybody in this room is holding hands in some way or touching each other in some way, shape, or form, like a web, that's what Hadoop does. It allows one processing power of the room that combines the processing and the data together to speed up everything. That's where big data term comes from, great marketing hype term, but Hadoop as a technology that was founded by engineers at Yahoo years ago because they were getting masses and masses of information from lots of different sources, and that bottleneck between one side to the other was causing them problems, and that's when they built Hadoop. So think about those things as we go through. Thank you, you can sit down. That's what big data has done for us today because of a couple of reasons. It's storage. The prices of storage has gone down dramatically. And I remember, I'll be dating myself now, but many, many years ago, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars for a megabyte. You know, gigabytes and terabytes didn't even exist back then. And then you start getting into technology vendors like Informatica, like others, and then you get into consumers. So depending on which lens you look at things, you could be a big data consumer. I think Walmart and Amazon are great use cases for that. You can be a big data storage provider, HDS, EMC, there's lots of other ones out there, or you can be an integrator, which is what we do. So what's changing about this is the way things are changing with the world. And it's really starting with the way IT is changing. We all have had IBM mainframes, we've had SAP, we've had Oracle. They've been very transactional. One record in, think of a banking system. One record in, one record out. You change a journal, you don't change a journal. So what's been changing is companies have been moving away from what we call on-premise platforms into the cloud platforms. Cloud providers are much faster to deploy. You don't have to have the infrastructure on site, on campus, on premise that costs a lot of money to buy, costs a lot of money to maintain, costs a lot of money to keep cool. So there's a lot of economical values of moving things to the cloud. You can have one big massive data storage, and it can be somewhere that can be disaster recovered. And then you come up with someone like a VMware who's now said, here's one server that we can slice up 100 different ways. So through technology, all of these things have been coming together to get to where we are today. Mobile, social, Facebook, interactions, and those sort of things. So IT is changing because a lot of things are moving to the cloud. What's also changing is the way we all interact. You know, it's no longer a one-to-one relationship, it's a one-to-many. Think of Facebook and those interactions that go on every single day. That's where things really start to get interesting. And then we used to see it on a dumb terminal. Now it's on the phone. You want the data where you want it, and that's what becomes important. So IT has been driving a lot of this change in the industry, but what's also driving it is the data volumes, the data variety, and the data velocity at which volume comes in. Moving data to the cloud means that it's not sitting somewhere in a room that you can keep under lock and key. So you have a lot of issues with security. Those interactions are tens of thousands, if not millions. One of the best analogies of how big data works, and not a nice situation that had to happen, but it's a good illustration of how the leveraging of the technology and the leveraging of the interactions fix something quickly, and that was the Boston bombing. Within 24 hours, they had built a Hadoop cluster and they were scouring Twitter and Facebook for leads. You know, you couldn't do that if you were in a relational database that we had 40 years ago, which theoretically is still here today. You couldn't have done that because of the sheer volume of interactions and trying to piece those interactions together. Because a relational database has a common field that you have to link. It could be a phone number, could be a name, could be an email address, whatever it may be, an account number back in the old banking days. But those interaction connections is hundreds of thousands, if not millions. So think about all the volume of tweets and Facebook posts, little tips here and there that they had to pull together. That's what they were able to leverage to be able to track those guys down very, very quickly. That was the power of Hadoop. That was the power of big data. And it's also changing, as I said, the way that executives, business leaders, recruiters want to give the data. You know, wouldn't it be nice if you had an iPad or something you can sit down with a hiring manager and say, look, here's where things are up to. You know, we saw this morning about the landscape and the futures of having, how would we call it, I've gone blank here. The landscape, the talent pool size. Be able to walk into a manager and say, here's a talent pool size. That's really, really powerful. So having that information at your fingertips becomes very, very critical. So the thing that's really driving big data and the term big data is because of not the transactions, but the interactions that are going on between Facebook and all those sorts of things. It's actually scary. We recently acquired a company called Strike Iron, and they do data augmentation. They add data to marketing companies. And the first week I called the guys and said, I want to know what you do, because you can enrich my CRM data. And everybody that knows me knows I'm a data geek about how can I enrich the data we already have. Well, they showed me a spreadsheet of 1,000 fields, it was nearly like 1,200 fields of information that they capture on every one of us in this room. And it's scary. I'll never ever fill out another online form. When I started thinking about the potential of that up front, was like, whoa, we could really augment this stuff. But it felt like Big Brother. It really felt scary. You know, we see where you live, we see what car you drive, we see where your kids go to school. You could put a big case together. It's like, Cindy, you need to come work for Informatica because I see you could do with some more money and you drive a shitty car and you do this. There's a whole lot of big data stuff that could be really scary. And exactly, there's a lot of things there. So that's where thinking about big data and HR of the whole point, fact or fiction. I have my beliefs as of where talent is today and where HR is today, but these are the guys that are really driving a lot of the fuel that is really getting us to the big data space. And again, I want you to think about big data of not lots of data. It's about the complexity of the data and the transactions and the interactions and how that comes together. I don't know about you, but you know, business is really driving a lot of these changes. You know, up in the city, there's a very large retailer that if you're a customer of theirs, when you walk into a store, they will be asking you to connect via Twitter. They'll be asking you to like their page. And why do you think that is? Because when you like something or when you connect to something, they now see everybody in your network, like the first degree or second degree. And now they see how many people follow you on Twitter. The more people you are on Twitter, the more VIP status you get. And when you purchase something, they tend to post it up there with the theory of you'll then share it with your friends will see it, or your friends know your birthday's coming up, you'll buy more. And as a retailer, they've spent a lot of money in leveraging those connections. You know, I parked my car the other day here, and Facebook said, oh, Chris Hoyt was here 5 minutes ago. I went, what was he doing here at 7 o'clock in the morning, walking the streets? But all those connections of the different systems are allowing us to do a lot of different things. The question is, what is it going to allow us to do for recruiting? So if you again think about business, you know, financial services, retail, manufacturing, I think Tesla is a good use cases. They're now pushing out lots and lots of data and lots of data down. You know, the great one that I think most of us love in the city is Uber. Masses and masses of transactional data coming from left to right, all over the place. Amazon, you saw the drone up there before. Can you imagine the amount of information you need to capture from all different angles to be able to do something with that. So business is really jumping onto the big data bandwagon because they're not just leveraging lots of data, they're leveraging lots of data from lots of different places to make business decisions. So, fact or fiction? Big data for HR, I think is fiction. And the reason I think it's fiction is because HR data is HR data. It tends to be internal to a company. TA data, I'll get to that in a second. So HR data is internal data. Performance data, that's internal to a company, that's inside the firewall. Things like mobility data, relocation data, that's inside the firewall. Compensation data, it's inside the firewall. Can you really imagine augmenting or adding more to that data from the outside world through interactions? We would all get sued, number one. Where big data for HR does come into play is in talent acquisition. So I think for HR as a overall place, I think there is no such thing as HR big data, because the types of data we have, yes, they may be large databases if we're a 300-person company, but we're not pulling those interactions in. Where it does become interesting is in talent acquisition, because it's outward facing. Now, in some way, shape or form, we can leverage a lot of those other sources. We can leverage data that we pull into the CRM. We can leverage a lot of the social media data to pull interests in. You know, wouldn't it be nice to know what a personal interest is of someone before you call them? Sort of what was said on the stage this morning. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to have that warm call with someone to show you read something about their blog when you have a conversation with them? So it's all about how do you know, have deeper relationships with your customers or your candidates or prospects to get there. And then when you start looking at all the startups that are out there today, there's something new every day that's about some sort of interaction. And every time you sign up to a product or online web service and you say, sign in with Facebook, you've just given them access to join you to them. I was bamboozled one day and I just signed up for Spotify, and it's like, how do they know what I'm listening to over there? Because I signed up with LinkedIn. So all these social interactions that we're doing with Facebook and LinkedIn, they're all understanding how we can connect to each other, sort of like the last keynote. So data sources are really key when it comes to understanding what big data can do for you, or what, I'm just going to drop the word, I'm going to call it lots of data. What lots of data can do for you in TA and how you can possibly leverage that. So at the end of the day, we really strive for these things. We strive for a digital profile of some sort. You know, how far away is it before the old resume is going to disappear? In some cases, it's disappeared already, because most people will have, at least in my industry anyway, most people will have a pretty good representation of their resume as a LinkedIn profile. And what do we all do? We scan a LinkedIn profile to see whether they're even going to bother with that first introduction. That's what we do. I think there's a lot of work that we need to do as a collective about helping candidates and prospects. Some of them don't want to do this because they don't want to be found, but helping them know how we find them. If we help them reverse engineer the process, then they'll help us find them. And some are smart to do that and some are not. So we really want the digital profile. We want some sort of social footprint. What are their interests? And there's an interesting story. There's a customer of ours who does a lot of public speaking. He's out all the time. He wears $4,000 suits. He drives ridiculously expensive cars. He stays in fancy hotels. He's always flying stuff, and he's a real affluent guy. But that's what he does on the outside. So what do you think marketing companies do? They bombard him with fancy hotels, go and buy the newest car, go and buy the newest suit. That is the last thing he wants to do. The last thing he wants to do is go on a holiday and stay in a 5-star hotel. But no one would know that, because that's his outside persona. His inside persona that his friends may know, inside Facebook, knows he likes to go backpacking and kayaking and surfing. And they're the things that would get him out of bed when it comes to his personal life. So it comes back to how, and I don't know this yet, but how do we start to pull apart the social footprint that can help us give more insight into the prospects that we want to bring into the company? Career aspirations. You know, I've said, I think probably one of the most tweeted things I've sort of said is, if recruiters just picked up the phone we would get a lot more understanding of what would get a candidate out of bed. And it's been around for forever. There's the science and there's the art of it. And I think the art that is slowly being lost because of the digital age is the art of picking up the phone like the executive recruiters used to do a while ago. And I know the emails that I've responded to, and I've shared some of them with my teams, are the ones that really talk to me as, I want to know about you as a person. I don't have a job right now. It could be total BS, but I don't have a job right now. I want to know what's going to get you out of bed. If something does cross my desk, I know when to call you. And I will give them 15, 20 minutes. Here's what excites me. How many people in this room really do that? Good. There's a few people. I think that's a skill that needs to be inherited by everybody. That's going to really change the candidate experience of the people you're trying to touch day in, day out to bring them into your company. So career aspirations is something I think we're all looking for. Interests is just a way to get things started. I saw your blog, I saw this, I saw that, whatever that happens to be. They're little snippets that we could get from social media if the person actually has their social media profile opened up. Lots of things like that would help us have that warm call, because this is all really about the warm call. And then the resume. Until there is a replacement for the resume or something else that we can use, and a lot of it is the applicant tracking systems that we use have certain algorithms of finding certain keywords. That's what spits back. So until they come up to speed, we're sort of stuck with the resume in some way, shape, or form, especially for the folks that don't want to be found. And when you have all that, you really have the Holy Grail. Is there anything else that people think of that we're really looking for? If we had all that, isn't our job easy? So where it starts to become difficult is the landscape that we all have to deal. So now I want to get out of the whole philosophical conversation, the 10,000-foot view of big data and what it is, what it isn't, to ground level. What is it about what we do that makes this challenging? CRM systems, they're very manual. Put something in, good data out. Garbage data in, garbage data out. But if you go and do a Boolean search and you go and pull up a whole lot of names, you need to be able to do something with it. You need to be able to put it in some sort of repository. So if you have a CRM, it ends up being the repository of either goodness or the repository of badness. The applicant tracking system. Now you've got two separate systems. One that really talks about the active candidates. People are coming to your career site, applying for a job, going into your applicant tracking system. Is everybody always searching the applicant tracking system? Do I search the CRM? Well, there's no one in the CRM. Do I go back to LinkedIn? Do I create a project folder? Oh, I found some people there. I've emailed them, but they haven't responded to me. Okay, I'll go back to my active. So it's this cycle of in and out of multiple separate systems. And that's the challenge that I see we have with data as an industry. And I think that's the problem for us to solve when we start getting to different sourcing tools. You know, we're all here because we use LinkedIn Recruiter, and there's some great data there, but then you want to be able to, in a year's time or 2 years' time, know what sort of conversations are being going on backwards and forwards by not necessarily one recruiter, but multiple recruiters. So there's lots of different sourcing tools that causes issues with that, of pulling all that data into one location that we can do something with. The social footprint. We have, as a company, a lot of the technology that can go and do that, but there's just a lot of issues that come into user agreements where you actually can't pull a lot of that data together. So the technology's there, we're still catching up with how we can actually implement it. Then dashboards to know what's working and what's not. Exception reporting. Show me all the records in my CRM that don't have a phone number, a cell phone, whatever that happens to be, because there's certain pieces of information that are more valuable than something else. And then search engine optimization. If people can't find you, whether you're looking for them or whether you're not, these are all the different systems that we're constantly looking at data from to pull things together. And this is where it sort of starts to get to the grassroots of this. But it also takes a team to do this. I don't think it's rocket science. Getting to the point where you can deliver what we're sort of talking about today, I don't think it's rocket science, but it does take some people to make it happen. It takes marketing, because you need a lot of content that you can continuously feed to your leads and prospects to get them interested. Be white papers, customer testimonials, employee testimonials, whatever that may be. If you're going after, an enterprise salesperson, you want to be showing them some recent wins and why you would want to come and work at our company versus the next company because you can make $1 squillion here versus $1 squillion there. So it takes marketing to help you do that. It takes IT because there is some technology behind there that you have to really be thinking about how to pull this data together. TA Ops, if you have a separate TA or HR Ops, you'll need help from them to eventually collate this data, put it into one place. And then the recruiters, it really comes down to you is how you think about this type of data and how you leverage it. So it really does start with a change of mindset. And it starts with the premise of think of data first. I know it's difficult, and I still struggle with it as well, because we're all running 100 miles an hour, and the time it takes to copy that URL and put into a CRM or here or there, it does take a bit of time. But thinking of the data you need tomorrow that you want to collect today. How many people have had a cell phone number, the same cell phone number, for more than 6 years? Okay, see, nearly every hand. More than 6 years? Less than 6 years? More than 10 years, the other ones? Okay, 95% of the room has the same phone number for many, many years. I was stupid enough, and I stopped a year ago paying for my old cell phone number in Australia, and I haven't lived there for nearly 5 years, but I still kept paying for that phone number just in case I ever moved back there. That was a bit silly. But for me, that is one of the, if not the most valuable pieces of data we as recruiters can use. I think more powerful than LinkedIn URL, but they go together. Because you search on me today and you find X in a profile, and then you have my cell phone number. And then in 2 years' time, you look at me again and you say, oh, okay, he's got all these extra skills now, but I've got to get back to them again. That cell phone number is always the lowest common denominator, and everybody's just proven it yet again that most of you have got the same phone number. That's what I mean by thinking data first. How do you capture that piece of information today that you may not need until 6 months' time? And that's where it gets really challenging, because you're balancing up. I guess it's like politicians. What do I do in the next 4 years? I don't care what happens after that because I may not be around, but how do we capture little things today that make our life a little bit easier tomorrow? So it is a bit of a mind shift change, and we heard about the changes that we're all going through about recruiters becoming marketeers and talent advisors and strategists. There's lots of those things being thrown at us left, right, and center. And if you think about data first, and I think there's some great webinars that Brendan Brown gave up there on the way he's thinking of data within LinkedIn that we can all learn from. And I think LinkedIn have so much information on the people that we wanted to hire. It's about how do you leverage that to the best of your abilities. Something was said this morning is, I think Jeff sort of said, recruiting is not selling. My background is sales, so I'm more of a sales guy than a recruiter. But I think everyone's a customer. So in some way, there's some sort of selling relationship. Everyone is a customer. What is known, at least for Informatica, we don't get a customer engaged with us unless they've touched us 9 times somewhere. Be a blog, be a website, whatever it may be. And I would go back and ask your marketing departments, how often does it take for someone to really reach out and maybe accept a phone call of an inside salesperson or a rep, whatever that may be? But our data shows 9 times. A customer touches us 9 times digitally before they'll engage. I'm yet to find the number for us, for TA. But I would guess it's probably something similar, because we're marketing in some way, shape or form. We're selling a promise. We're selling a culture. We're selling insights into the organization that we're trying to attract talent to. And there's probably lots of different ways that people want to see before they'll actually engage. You send an email. Does someone engage straight away? Maybe. Or if they're a passive candidate, they'll go and look at Glassdoor. They'll go and look at your career site. They'll go and look at the corporate site. They'll look at white papers. They'll look at blogs. They look up lots of different sources before they'll necessarily engage. So that's where I think thinking about recruiting and marketing through the eyes of a customer, or in this case, a candidate, you put a different spin on the mindset and the data you may need to capture or the data you may need to push out. Because it's not always about pulling in, it's also about what do you push out. So there is so many TA applications coming out every single day. Most of them have the word big data in them somewhere, but if you look at all of them, it really boils down to one thing: is the data that they're capturing is the competitive differentiator for you. There's lots of sourcing tools out there that provide lots of data, but it's how you can then turn that data into something else that you can then leverage. And I think that's the biggest thing that's really, I think, changes the way. If you start thinking about data first, everything opens up. Whether it be at the front of the cycle, when it comes to how you're attracting someone to you, whether it be right at the early touch point to your organization when it comes to the candidate experience, how they engage with you on your career site, how easy it is for them to apply. Are you on mobile? Are you only on desktop? Is your career site mobile optimized but your corporate site's not? There's all these little things that all the touch points of marketing come together, and there's some vendors out there who are trying to pull all those things together, but they all have the common element of they're leveraging a piece of information, and he who owns the data is king or queen. So the biggest question is, why is my data going bad? Data quality, and I think I heard the word sort of this morning, data quality is the biggest issue we all face with. So there's some research done by Bloor that showed, if you don't think and manage data continuously, it goes bad 1 to 1.5% per month. Let's just think about that. Put that into the analogy of a plane. You're taking off from San Francisco. You're off by 1 degree, and you were targeting New York. You're either in Toronto or you're in Cancun. One or the other, or maybe Florida, you may have missed. But 1 degree off at the beginning may not seem like a lot. But the further and further you go from center base, the further you are apart. So thinking about exception reporting. Something was added today. Don't always just think about show me every record that has X, show me all the records that don't have X. Then you've got a means to go and find out what needs to be cleansed, what needs to be augmented, what can you actually enrich the data, which is why I went straight to StrikeIron when we acquired them. But these are the things that you need to think about is, how good is the team at capturing data? How good is it? How easy is it for them to enter the data into the systems, whatever they may be? How do you know when someone's job has changed? They might have applied for a job a year ago. Now you go and look at them, and what do? We do a keyword search, and we're looking at a year-old data. So making sure you have a process to now go out and either re-engage with that person to come back in through a talent community, or maybe apply for another job, or go and look at their LinkedIn profile as a record to go back to them. It's about how do you capture a record today that you may need tomorrow. And it also comes back to how much time do you spend. I have a team, I've seen this as important for a while. I actually have a team in India, of four people that do nothing but continue to manage the data. Recruiter might put something in today, and each week the team over there will go through and look at what was put in that week, how much of it came in from automatic sources versus things that come in from a manual source, and they'll go in and try and augment that data. So that's the importance that I've placed on it by actually having a team dedicated to having someone focusing on data quality all of the time. So Mikkel said 63% of CRMs fail, and they all fail because of a lack of a data strategy, lack of really looking at the data first. Who here has a CRM? Okay, only a handful. Makes it much harder. If you don't have one, you rely on less systems. When you do have one, you can get more fancy, but you have a lot more data that you have to manage from multiple different sources, especially today. The scary thing, I come back from HR Tech last week, and what was a massive, anybody else at HR Tech last week? No? Massive expo floor. And at first glance, I think, wow, this is great. I can see all these vendors, I can see all the latest technology, who's doing some cool stuff and who's not. But I quickly got to the point of, oh my God, there are so many more point solutions this year than there was last year, actually makes our job harder, not easier. Because everybody's trying to solve a little piece of the puzzle. And that's what makes it difficult for us as a talent acquisition industry, because there's still no one size fits all. There's still no one solution that really fits all. There's some great point solutions, and then what we have to do is integrate them together and share that data between one or the other. That's where a data-first thinking really comes in, of how do we manage those things together. So things to consider, whether you have an ATS, whether you have a CRM, is, are you getting the right data in? So many apply processes of your ATSs have pages and pages and pages of information. Do you look for that? Do you search for that? What do we mostly search on? A title? Some technology keywords? Yet we ask all this other stuff. What was your firstborn's cousin's second dog's name? What school you went to? All these relevant at the time questions that we ask them to give us the data, but we never use it. So a data-first mentality also says, if you don't use it, don't collect it. But that's where you've got to be thinking further ahead to make sure you know what you need to be collecting in the future. And that's what makes this hard, is you're always got to be thinking ahead to see what's there. So are you collecting the right data? Do you have good data? You may have data, but it may be out of date. I would love to get to the point where we actually have a dynamic CRM that's pulling in things from everywhere. I think Salesforce has been trying to get to that with customers, but because we have different industries, no one can come out there and say, here's a system for you that's going to solve all. Those things just aren't there. So making sure you've got good data, relevant data to you, becomes pretty important. And then do you have complete data? And it sort of comes back to the Holy Grail before. Do we have all of those little aspects that you're capturing today that make something relevant for your audience, for your customers, for your candidates, for your prospects, that you can use when you reach out? So those things are pretty important. So the call to action, and as I said, it really does start with all of us, is we are all busy, but data quality can only start by the people in the room. If we place an importance on it, and we place an importance of taking that extra 1 or 2 minutes today to capture that data in a repository that you know you'll go back and look to, or your peer may go back and look to if the team expands or contracts, whatever, but someone knows where to go to. So it really does start with, if a manager wants some information in the future and you've already got a lot of that information up front because you were just saving it for a rainy day, and I'm not meaning capture every single piece of information that's out there, because we could just do that 24/7, but it's capturing the important things for you, and you're the only one that knows what those important things are. If you capture those, then it's about maintaining searchability. How do you find them in the future? And that's where your systems come into that. Again, I'll go back to that same thing. What do you collect today that you may need tomorrow, or what will you need tomorrow that you need to collect today? I'd also say automate as much as possible. There is some great technologies out there. There's some great front-end systems that allow, when an applicant comes in, that pieces of data comes all the way through. I think the apply with LinkedIn, I think that is a classic example of a great way to automate your front end, because now you've actually got information from that person as they've applied for the job. So there's those sort of things. So automate as much as possible through all of your downstream systems. Think about capturing one piece of information once, and how many other downstream systems can I get it to, because you don't want to be searching an ATS and a CRM and LinkedIn Recruiter, but we all have to do that. So what we've done now, and I'm still not sure whether it's the right idea, but we'll test it for a little while, is we've got duplicated databases. If 10 people come in and apply for a job, that piece of information comes in and they go into the ATS, but they also go into the CRM. For the simple reason of trying to make it easier, and I'm a huge advocate for candidate experience, making it easy for the recruiters and the candidates coming into the process, but now making it easy for the recruiters to only have to think about searching once in in one system. Or searching LinkedIn, no one's there, search in the CRM, then maybe go and search in another system. So it's really a degree of separation. How do you start to drill that down? So automate as much as possible, and then augment as much as possible. There are services out there that will actually, you can use to pull out public domain data from all over the web, so there's those sorts of things there. And really think about the automation as well as the manual entry of how do you validate good data versus bad? And that's what I have my data team do constantly to see what's good data versus bad data. So the recommendation is if you really want to accelerate what you're doing, it's really thinking data first. That is, in my mind, a key differentiator. Think about what type of data you want to be collecting to make it competitive for you, because it's the bad data that's causing your loss efficiency when it comes to having to search multiple different places to find that pink squirrel. There's no polka dots on that pink squirrel, so that's probably worse again. And then the data you have, how do you continually think about and manage improving that data over time? Because this is not something that you're just going to turn on and it's going to be better. It's a constant mindset of how do you keep thinking about what should we augment, what should we go and try and find, what can we pull from social domains and so forth. They're the main things that I think have gotten us where we are today, that we compete in two of the most competitive markets in the world, Bangalore and the US, Silicon Valley, for enterprise software salespeople and developers. And most people in here are hiring either one of those two. So we're in a very competitive landscape, and thinking data first is helping us drive down our time to fill, driving up a lot of improvements in process to bring people into the organization. So, tagline of Informatica, how do you maximize the potential of the data? I think you have the answers to that based on your client groups, your customers, your hiring managers. What is it that they may want to see? By understanding your data, understand it, integrate it, think about how do you cleanse it, how do you relate it to something else, what I sort of talked about before with interactions, how do you relate those data, how do you secure it, more of an IT issue, but more importantly, how do you then act on your data, how can you use it? Now, your architecture, this is where the partnerships really come into it from IT. How do you work with them to integrate your ATS to your HRIS system or to your CRM or to your SEO platform, thinking about how you bring those data sets together. And then to your business is how do you really drive agility by bringing in top talent to the organization before they know it. And if you've seen the webinar that Brendan Brown talks about is the 4 quadrants of which are the people that you absolutely want to bring into the company. They're the ones you need to have a really deep relationship with. The bottom left-hand corner, they're the people that you probably will never have a relationship with. And then there's different quadrants where you'll do different things. So you'll have a different strategy of how you build those deeper relationships. How do you market to the ones that you want to get to the company, but they're not really engaged enough yet to really take that first step. And that all comes down with understanding your audience, understanding what top talent needs, and understanding the potential that you have in helping your hiring managers segment that data to deliver return on their investment, which is their time, and whatever the type of person you're trying to hire for them. So that's what I had for today. Hopefully it's cleared up some questions about big data versus lots of data versus processing of data. Any questions? And if anybody has a question, please come up to the microphone. Great.
Hi, you said that you had a data team. How many people are on that team?
4.
And they're in the talent acquisition group?
Yep, they report directly into TA.
And what are their responsibilities? I mean, how do you carve it out?
Their responsibilities are really, recruiters come up with a short list of names. They'll then go out there and scan the public domain for phone numbers, email addresses, things that we want to be able to collect. With response rate challenges that we're all having, we now have to think of how can we get to someone not just through an in-mail, but through a phone number, through a cell phone, through a personal email address. So they're out there always augmenting that data by trying to find public domain data to pull that information back in that the recruiters can then leverage. Yeah, good question. What else? Another one.
Hi, you provided a lot of really great information about augmenting and enriching candidate data, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you leverage data to do things like inform search strategy, report on health of a search, think about the efficacy of your searches, so linking hiring data to performance management tools to sort of link talent acquisition and HR and sort of the long-term effects of what we do. That's one of the things that we work on quite a bit where I am. I would love to hear more about your thoughts on how you do that. I'm with AppNexus.
Okay. First off is the performance side of things. We have done some correlations on performance, mostly in the sales organization, and we were trying to find where were we hiring from, were they coming from a certain source, and we weren't able to get a correlation. I've had an intern in for the last 3 years every summer, and they work on some projects like that, and we actually haven't found a lot of correlation with that. We're in the process of replacing our applicant tracking system, and one of the challenges we have to not be able to get to some of those selection criteria is not able to get a lot of internal metrics or internal ratios between the two. So I don't think we're at that stage where we are going to that level. We're certainly not at a Google stage. Because a lot of it is coming back to, I can't extract the data from an applicant tracking system that only will give me a point solution. And whenever I run a report in the ATS, I get point in time, not aggregate data, and that's a challenge. What we are doing at the moment to try and get around that is we're actually building an enterprise data warehouse where we're extracting every field of the data from the applicant tracking system into one platform. And we're actually linking that platform into a company called Visier, which is a predictive analytics platform. And what we're hoping for, and what we've seen so far with the architecture that we've built, is the data is there, it's just difficult to pull out and relate together. So I'm hoping with that, and I'll know in the next month or two because we're ready to go live with the EDW, what are some of those ratios during that real early selection process to know what's working. So we're certainly not there compared to where I would like to be, but what we've been building is building the infrastructure to get us there. Yeah.
Thanks.
It all comes back to the source data. If you can't get the data in the beginning, we can only pull the things that we know we have and then make some assumptions from it there. Good question.
Thanks.
What else? Does it clear up what big data is?
Hi, it's Mark from EY.
How you doing?
Hey, good to see you again.
Good.
We spoke briefly about this last time we met, but it continues to be an issue for me. Obviously, there's a lot of great technologies here in terms of using data, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on the data privacy aspects of all of this, because obviously that's a big hindrance to being able to really use this data for talent acquisition.
It's probably a bigger hindrance because of your accent than mine. So if you've got to deal with anything in Europe, data privacy becomes an absolute nightmare. So if you're hiring people, just pretty much just say Europe, Germany, France, any of the countries over there. If you find someone in the public domain, you have to tell them that you found them. And a big competitor of us does this very well, and they do it like 5 or 6 times where they'll go back out and they'll find them on LinkedIn and they'll put them in a CRM, and now that I found you, I've now got to tell you. So I'll send you one message, hi, I've got your data in the system. Are you okay with that? Didn't hear back. Got to send it to you again. I didn't hear back. They'll send it out 3 or 4 times, and then at that point, they have to delete the record. So I haven't certainly solved for that. It is a challenge that I think we all have to build into the processes to be able to get to that point. And I think another big software company in the Valley or in Europe does that pretty well because they're built in the processes to be able to go back. But it is an issue. I think it's less of an issue at the moment in the US, but I think the more and more public data that gets augmented, I think it is going to be a bigger issue in the future because there's a lot of connectivity, there's a lot of things that are interacting with each other that weren't there 1, 2, 5 years ago, and they're continuing to get worse. And it's that interaction data that is driving this technology that makes it more available for companies. I think that's where the biggest challenges still lie. So when you fix it, come and let me know. Thank you. What other questions have we got? Otherwise, I'll let you out early. Okay. Well, thank you for your time this afternoon. Don't forget, please do the surveys at the end of the day and provide feedback for all that you've seen today. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.